In headlines from around the military, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin directed the Pentagon to review the 20 Medals of Honor awarded to U.S. troops for actions at Wounded Knee in 1890, when soldiers killed and injured between 350 and 375 Lakota men, women, and children. Austin ordered the creation of a special panel to determine whether to retain or rescind the medals, according to the Department of Defense. In a July 19th memorandum ordering the review, Austin said the panel would investigate each awardee's individual actions and also consider the context of the overall engagement. It's never too late to do what's right, an unnamed senior defense official said in a statement about the panel. And that's what's intended by the review that the Secretary directed, which is to ensure that we go back and review each of these medals in a rigorous and individualized manner. In more news from around the military, a bipartisan congressional panel says the U.S. is not prepared for a major war, saying its global military competitors are advancing rapidly while America develops capability at a flat pace. The evaluation of the state of national security is a regular report authored by a group of experts summoned by Congress every 4 years to get an outside assessment of the U.S.'s defense capability. The panel this year said that, in its eyes, the Pentagon moves too slow, Congress is too dysfunctional to advance security issues, and the public is woefully unaware of the potential shortfalls. The context for much of the report was the rapid advance and partnership of Russia and China. Recommendations for solutions were broad and included an overhaul of how weapon systems are sourced and purchased, higher defense spending, and long-term integrated deterrence that mixes military and political efforts. For a full story on the report, head to defensenews.com. In a related item, Washington's top diplomat and defense chief announced $500 million in military funding Tuesday to boost Philippine defenses and advance a proposed military intelligence sharing pact as the two nations renewed their concerns over China's actions in the region. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin met with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who has sought to fortify his country's alliance with Washington as hostilities between Philippine and Chinese forces flare in the disputed South China Sea.
Both of us share concerns, and many other countries in the region share concerns as well, about some of the actions that the People's Republic of China has taken, escalatory actions in the South China Sea, the East China Sea, and elsewhere. And this is something that we heard much about from our colleagues at the recent ASEAN meetings.
Today, as you heard, Secretary Blinken and I announced that we are poised to deliver a once-in-a-generation investment to help modernize the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Coast Guard. We're working with the U.S. Congress to allocate $500 million in foreign military financing into the Philippines. And this level of funding is unprecedented, and it sends a clear message of support for the Philippines from the Biden-Harris administration, the U.S. Congress, and the American people.
From the Army, William Calley Jr., the only U.S. soldier convicted of crimes in the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, has died. Calley was in charge of a platoon that killed more than 500 civilians in March of 1968, one of the most notorious massacres in U.S. military history. Calley was sentenced to life in prison for his actions, but had his sentence reversed by President Richard Nixon. He died in a hospice center in Florida at the age of 80. And finally, Marines at Camp Lejeune recently got a chance to test their mettle against a pair of unexpected combatants, professional arm wrestlers. A pair of the brawny athletes stopped by the base recently just before a nearby event called the World Series of Arm Wrestling. The arm wrestlers gave the Marines tips on the sport and let them try their luck against the pros. World Series of Arm Wrestling founder Greg Sharp said he enjoyed the opportunity to introduce the sport to service members.
Well, we had a couple of pretty well-known arm wrestlers, Don Underwood and Jamie Sheldon. They are part of the team here at World Series of Arm Wrestling, and I called them up and said, guys, we have an opportunity to come on base the day before we actually get started with the event, and would you guys come in a day early and pull with a bunch of troops and introduce arm wrestling to them? And lots of smiles. A lot of guys that just were happy to have something different there. Competing, we put a bunch of them against each other, have a little camaraderie. These young men and women are heading over to Japan here in the next couple of weeks, and they'll be gone for 6 to 8 months. So if we left them with anything, I hope we left them with a great feel of a new experience and just some excitement and, some anxious energy to come back and maybe start arm wrestling when they get back to the States.